Accepted in some countries, aren't you? You had a hard time, was it France you had a hard time getting in and out of?
Oh, no, the French always hated the English.
Yeah, they hate them even worse since about the middle of last week.
No, I think that the French are very French. It's the only country in the world where I think, you know,
true.
no, but in England we accept other people's cultures. We're very democratic. In France, France is France, the French are French, and they don't take anything else. And, you know, they don't really react. I mean, you're very lucky. We played in Strasbourg, and we played 17,000 people in America. Strasbourg, 200 people came. That was, you know, more than the first.
But you don't think it's anything to do with the language?
No, they're just very lazy, you know. Oh, rock and roll, you know. It's kind of, they're more into potatoes and wine and things like that.
But it would seem to me that some of the music you do is closer to the Eurovision Song Contest than to the
it's funny because
rock and roll.
Roy, our guitarist, when we played in France, he couldn't believe why we only played to a half-full audience, because we sold 1 million singles in France of Do You Really Want to Hurt Me? Karma Chameleon has sold, you know, over 1 million. But, you know, they don't have the same appreciation for music in France or Europe. I mean, my tour of Europe was the most depressing thing that ever happened to me. You know, in Italy, we played to all men, you know. I mean, not one person screamed at me. It was like, they just looked at us, and it wasn't, you know, because all the girls are very, you know, the young girls are Catholics, and they're not allowed really to go to rock and roll concerts after, you know, it's 10 o'clock at night. So it's very strict there. So to play to all men was quite weird, you know.
But that's the strange thing about, if I may say so, about your audience here, and I'm not sure whether this is true of America, but certainly here, it's right across the board. Oh, yeah. It's very young to very old. Mm. Why? Why do you think that should be?
I think because in England, we're far more liberal. We're far more democratic. I mean, you know, you can complain about this country, you know, but basically it's the best country in the world, you know, for everything, you know. All the best things happen here, you know, music. England, I think, is like a laboratory for ideas, and all the best things happen here. I mean, whether or not we capitalise on our best assets is another thing. I mean, I think a lot of the time, you know, we could really put more into our musicians. Like at school, I was never really encouraged to do music. It was, you can't kick a ball right outside the class. You know, it wasn't a case of giving you and making you do what you were good at. It was a case of do everything else, or, you know, do what you want.
But maybe you were an unconventional pupil.
I don't think so.
I mean, I bet you were.
I wasn't, actually. I think that I knew what I wanted. I think there are very few people who know what they want, obviously.
But your headmaster reckoned you were unteachable.
Well, he was very untalkable too.
But you see, a school can't cope with eccentrics, can it? I mean, you've got to have confirmation.
I wasn't always an eccentric. I think that
I bet you were, really.
No. I think that I've always been very logical. One of the things which my mother always says is that, you know, when I made a comment to her, it was a logical comment. I didn't just say, I'm not doing it. You know, I kind of give a good reason. And at school, I did the same thing, you know. If I felt that something was unjustified, then I'd say so. And obviously it got me into a lot of trouble. Because it's easier to teach 20 people who think the same than it is to teach 19 and one that doesn't.
Of course.
But I don't think that's such a good thing, really.
Should there be schools for people, special schools for people like you?
Yeah, a school for weirdos.
No, I didn't mean that, but for people with special talents or people who take a different view.
Well, I don't know, actually. No, I think that's
one person like you in a class is going to disrupt the whole class. You can see how the headmaster felt.
But also, you see, there were girls at my school who now work behind the Sainsbury's checkout, you know, who were just as cheeky as I was. And they really had no, you know, they didn't aspire to being pop stars. They were just cheeky young girls. And everything that was said, you know, they would comment to. So there was a lot of it going on at my school. I mean, also, because my headmaster, who you see in the papers quite a lot, he used to wear a board and tassel. So he had this 1,000-pleated cape. I mean, he was a complete drag queen. Well, you see, I think there's a certain amount of hypocrisy within society, because a priest wears a dress, it's not a dress. If a Hare Krishna walks past a building site, nobody whistles, but if Boy George does, oh well, when I wasn't Boy George, it was whoosh, whoosh, get a load of that, you know, slap your legs. But it was but, you know, you never, you know, when you imagine that something's part of somebody's culture, you don't object to it. But I think there is a lot of hypocrisy in this world, you know. I mean, this is a kilt, so I'm not wearing a skirt, this is a kilt, Scottish kilt. Now, this isn't a dress. So, you know, if I had big football knees and hairy legs, which I haven't actually, but if I did have, I would be quite acceptable. It's because I'm not the norm, but I feel very normal, because what I do is very normal for me. You know, so in a way, I don't have to justify myself.
But to get back to my original question, remember that question all those years ago when I said, why is it that older people have no difficulty accepting you? Is it because your songs are soft? Is it because they're ballads? Or is it because your image is not... it's not challenging any sex. There's no aggressive sexuality about your image.
I believe that if you want to educate somebody, it's like if you want to blow up a building, there's no point throwing a bomb through the window. You've got to go inside and plant it in the middle. That's the best way to bring it down. And I think a lot of people, their attitude is, I'm going to shock. Now, my attitude is a very intelligent attitude. I think there are hundreds of pubs all over England where there are drag queens you can go and laugh at. I'm not a drag queen. I don't want to be laughed. I'm very serious. And I think if you want to confront the world with eccentricity, you have to have a good explanation. You know, it's okay to be a clown in a circus, but not to be a clown in a supermarket. And I'm trying to make people more tolerant towards things which aren't harmful. You know, I don't deal with sex, you know, and...
Are you trying to get them to accept bisexuality, transsexuality, transvesticism?
No, you see, when you become very successful, the thing the press want to know is, are you bisexual? So I say, when I want sex, I have to buy it. Right. And, there's another one. Do you sleep with men? I never sleep. I usually try and stay awake whoever I sleep with. Very rude. But basically, you know, I think one of the reasons I like Cliff Richard is because he avoids that. Why should he have to talk about his sexuality? Why should he do... I think there's some... I mean, I believe in monogamy anyway, and I think that you must...
I made the point because you said you were trying to make things acceptable. That's what I was asking. Were you trying to make that acceptable?
Say if tomorrow...
What are you trying to make acceptable?
Let me just put it this way. Say if the Sun tomorrow said, OK, Terry Wogan is a suit rocker. He wears a suit, and so the next morning, everyone you see is, that's a suit rocker. Now, when you look at... No, that's an illogical way of looking at it, but you can boil it right down to people who wear yellow socks. I don't like you because you've got yellow socks on. And what I'm saying is that, you know, you can't judge a book by its cover, and that's something that, you know, that's an old saying. That's an old wives' saying almost. And I think that, you know, I try to be intelligent. I don't like to come across... I don't want to be just a rock and roll star.